Today, we're going to take a look at a time when Atari became involved with the United States military and learn about a series of events that were believed to be nothing but a conspiracy theory until proven in the early 2000s, over 20 years after these events took place. Video game companies today are well established, understand the direction that they're expected to move in, and generally don't deviate from the norm. During the late 1970s and early 1980s, this wasn't necessarily the case, and the early days of Atari were full of confusion on the topic of what video game companies would become as the medium matured. This unstable atmosphere for video game development came to a head for Atari in 1981, when some of the developers spent a short time working for the military and made an extremely rare and interesting game in the process. Today we'll be taking a look at Atari's bizarre contribution to the United States military, known as the Bradley Trainer, and we'll also take a look at what this whole project ended up having to do with Atari's Battlezone arcade game and the Star Wars franchise. Let's begin. It all began in November of 1980, when Atari released a revolutionary arcade cabinet called Battlezone. Battlezone was one of the first 3D video games to ever gain serious mainstream appeal, and is fondly remembered by just about anyone who had visited arcades in the 1980s. Battlezone has had numerous re-releases and remakes, and has been solidified as an integral part of arcade and video game history. The gameplay is simple but engaging. The player would use two joysticks to move their tank around, each joystick controlling one of the treads on their tank. The player would then use the fire button to shoot projectiles at enemy tanks and UFOs. Although the graphics are simple, they've aged quite well, and Battlezone is still an enjoyable experience. Now, what does Battlezone have to do with the United States military? Well, here's where things get interesting. Once Battlezone had gained significant popularity, the United States government took notice, and decided that with some major modifications, Battlezone would make a fantastic training tool for operation of the Bradley fighting vehicle, a tank platform that is still used by the United States today. In secret, the United States military approached Atari with the idea, and Atari agreed. Before development could begin, however, Atari needed to convince Ed Rotberg, the programmer of the original Battlezone game, to take on the project. In the words of Rotberg, "I'm a bit of a pacifist, so I didn't really want to help train people to kill. Plus, if you have a military contract, the government can really impose a lot of restrictions on your company, which I didn't think would be healthy for Atari. But management were under the gun to get it done, so I agreed, as long as I was absolved of any future involvement once it was finished." Thus began the confidential development of the Bradley Trainer. The military was hoping to have the Bradley Trainer up and running in only 3 months, and requested a large list of very specific changes to be made to the game in order to make it military ready. After working extremely exhausting hours, Rotberg finished the confidential project on time. As far as we know, only 2 Bradley Trainer cabinets were ever produced. The Bradley Trainer is quite different from its arcade game cousin. The color scheme was changed from green to white, and the UFO from Battlezone was replaced with a more detailed model of a helicopter. There were also a variety of gameplay changes. Game speed was slowed down significantly to mimic actual tank movement, and the player could no longer steer the tank, instead only being able to operate the turret. New controls were added, allowing the gun to move both horizontally and vertically, like an actual tank. Configurable ammunition, realistic weapons physics, allied tanks, and a complete control overhaul to match actual Bradley fighting vehicle controls were also added. More than 20 years after the Bradley Trainer was created, the United States government decided that it would be safe to release the game files to the public, and MAME support was completed in 2002. Sadly, even though you can emulate this game through MAME, the full control scheme and instructions remain a mystery, and accomplishing anything in the game is currently impossible. So what does this whole ordeal have to do with Star Wars? Well, it's pretty simple. Although the software for the Bradley Trainer was confidential, most of the hardware wasn't. As a result, the 4-axis yoke control panel that was used in the Bradley Trainer ended up being adapted to Atari's Star Wars cabinet. This cabinet released in 1983 and became another major success, with improvements on the rasterized graphics that were shown in Battlezone. After the exhaustion of working on a secret military project, Rotberg left Atari, but his legacy at the company lives on through both Battlezone and the Bradley Trainer. The mystery isn't quite over yet, however. Although only 2 prototype cabinets were officially released, many people believe that more were created, either by Atari or another third party. Even more interesting is that plenty of soldiers who trained to be gunners for the Bradley vehicles claim to have played a game very similar to the Bradley Trainer. In 1991, Rotberg was interviewed about the whole ordeal and said this: "I lost 3 months of my life, I'm not exaggerating here, doing this project under duress. I know of only one surviving unit and I'm not about to divulge its whereabouts. I thought if I answered this post I might stem the flurry of debate on a subject I'm not particularly fond of." Amazingly, one of the 2 Bradley Trainer prototype units was found in 2003, next to a dumpster outside of the Midway Games offices. No one knows why it ended up there, and the other prototype is still missing. The Bradley Trainer remains a partial mystery, an interesting military artifact, and a truly unique piece of arcade history. As time goes on, hopefully more information will be released on the Bradley Trainer project, but this is everything that we have for now. If you enjoy interesting video game mysteries and forgotten retro titles, watch out for my upcoming videos. Remember, it's up to us to keep these games from truly becoming lost.